Star Wars has been a good luck charm for theaters throughout the country. The movie made $2.6 million nationally during the first 3 days it played.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at some of the weirdest series of events that happened during the same period of time, whether it be on the same day or within a few weeks.
In Times Square, an awesome sight as hundreds of fans stood outside to watch the final episode on one of the world's largest television sets.
Toy Story 3 and the Final Firing Squad.
So long, partner.
Toy Story 3 was hotly anticipated by audiences who had waited 11 years since the previous Toy Story film. It was released in the U.S. on June 18, 2010, and would go on to rake in more than $1 billion.
Oh, it was fantastic. I am not disappointed in the least.
It was worth it.
But that is also the date of the execution of Ronnie Lee Gardner, who was convicted of capital murder in Utah. In 2004, Utah became the last state in the nation to ban execution by firing squad. Having been convicted before the change, Gardner was grandfathered in. As a result, he is currently the last civilian executed by firing squad in the United States, although there are some advocates who are pushing for a resumption of this method of execution. Planes and automobiles.
Are you ready? Let's go!
You've probably heard the old truism that it's safer to fly than to drive. After all, thousands of Americans die every year in fatal car crashes, one of the most common causes of death. It may come as a surprise to you, then, that the first modern vehicular casualty actually resulted from a plane crash. Days before Ford's Model T revolutionized transportation in 1908, aviation took its own fateful plunge. On September 17, 1908, a Wright brothers aircraft, piloted by Orville Wright, crashed during a test flight.
And Orville tried his best and tried to right the plane, and the plane crashed. And Orville broke a femur and broke ribs.
Though Wright survived, the crash killed U.S. Army observer and passenger Lieutenant Thomas E. Selfridge. Exactly 2 weeks later, on October 1st, Ford Motor Company released the Model T.
But Henry Ford's place in the annals of the 20th century was secure, even without another breakthrough car.
Luna 5 and I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Rock and astronomical history collided on May 12, 1965, as the Rolling Stones recorded their iconic anthem on the same day that an early Soviet spacecraft failed to arrive on the moon. Taking place in the midst of the Cold War, the Luna 5 mission was an ambitious attempt to make contact with the moon. But ultimately, a technical failure of the craft's gyroscope resulted in a crash landing.
In a lot of respects, they were well ahead of the game, but the reason they were well ahead of the game is because they had actually put all the hardware together and had applied that technology far better than we had.
Meanwhile, I Can't Get No Satisfaction was laid down at RCA Records after having been dreamt up by songwriter Keith Richards. While these two events are quite clearly as distinct as can be, it captures the major cultural and technological strides that were made in the 1960s. Star Wars and Shakespeare.
I have a very bad feeling about this.
Turn the ship around. Yeah, I think you're right.
The year 1977 saw a number of big events and changes around the world. France executed its last ever prisoner by guillotine. Apple released the Apple II, kicking off the personal computer revolution.
The revolutionary Apple II.
May 25, 1977 represented a major cultural shift in both the Eastern and Western hemispheres. In the U.S., Star Wars helped kick off a new era in blockbuster films. It was a cultural phenomenon, raking in money and sparking a decades-long fandom.
Well, I'm a real science fiction fan. I've got hundreds of science fiction books at home, and I think this is going to be a science fiction classic.
At the same time in China, the Chinese government lifted a ban on studying Shakespeare. It was a sign that Deng Xiaoping meant business with his open-door policy. It was a small but significant step in normalizing relations with the West.
I'm very sorry, sir. I have not seen Act 2.
Of course you have not. I have not written it.
Faxes and the Oregon Trail.
Here, there were no alternatives. All who traveled west had to pass Independence Rock, the most famous landmark on the trail.
Nowadays, fax machines are mostly antiques for everyone but the IRS, but you may be surprised to learn just how old they are. On May 22, 1843, intrepid pioneers set off for the West in search of a new life. This great migration set out to create a brave new world. Settlers on that fateful journey were the first of many such wagon trains setting out on what would come to be known as the Oregon Trail.
We'll have to water the animals from our own supply tonight.
Can't go without after a day like this.
Just 5 days later, Scottish inventor Alexander Bain patented the first fax machine. While pioneers braved the wild frontier, Bain was mapping out a future where documents could be transmitted over wires. Seinfeld and Sinatra.
It was a show about nothing. I mean, most TV is about nothing. At least this show is honest about it, you know? And now there's going to be some show which pretends to be about something, but it'll be really about nothing, and what are we going to do?
It's an eerie twist of pop culture fate that Jerry Seinfeld's iconic sitcom and Frank Sinatra's final curtain call occurred on the same day. On May 14, 1998, as the sun set on Seinfeld's groundbreaking run, the legendary crooner Sinatra passed away.
In later years, he continued to perform, even at a time when he could have retired to live a life of seclusion with his wife Barbara.
Sinatra, a titan of mid-century music and style, represented an era of classic glamour and smooth sophistication. Seinfeld, on the other hand, was the quintessential 90s sitcom, defining a generation with its neurotic humor and mundane charm. The coincidence felt like a cosmic nod to the changing of cultural guards. One era's sophisticated vibes giving way to a more self-effacing future in pop culture.
Jerry! Jerry! He wants to talk about Jerry! He wants to talk about Jerry! Jerry! Jerry!
Disney World and slavery.
I ain't gonna be telling you no more stories.
Sylvester McGee, the last known American-born enslaved person, died on October 15, 1971 in Columbia, Mississippi. Just 2 weeks earlier and a few states over, the most magical place on Earth, Walt Disney World, opened its doors to the public. McGee's passing marked the end of an era of unspeakable hardship and historical injustice.
If his age is true, he would have been the last surviving emancipated slave in the country when he died in 1971. Not only that, since he served with the Union at Vicksburg, he would have been the last Union Civil War veteran.
Less than a decade removed from the Civil Rights Act, America was still grappling with its legacy of slavery. Disney World was a symbol of a new, more egalitarian form of American capitalism, where anyone can be a consumer. Just as the last living vestige of chattel slavery died, America's monument to modern consumerism opened shop. JFK, Aldous Huxley, and C.S. Lewis.
And it was so incredible. These two men died the same day, dying in such a different circumstances.
Aldous Huxley, JFK, and C.S. Lewis were as different as thinkers come. One, a prophet of dystopian futures. Another, a charismatic leader cut down in his prime. And the third, a master of allegorical storytelling. The men didn't have anything in common until November 22, 1963. On that day, the world lost all three of them. President Kennedy was killed while campaigning in Dallas.
Boss, the president's been shot in Dallas 5 minutes ago.
Oh, no.
Lewis and Huxley died after years of illness. The very next day, as if the universe knew that the world needed whimsy, kindness, and good vibes, Doctor Who premiered. The show introduced audiences to a silly yet profound exploration of space and time, a fitting counterpoint to the somber reflections of the previous day.
You say you can't fit an enormous building into one of your smaller sitting rooms?
No.
But you've discovered television, haven't you?
Yes.
Then by showing an enormous building on your television screen, you can do what seemed impossible, couldn't you?
Apollo 11 and Chappaquiddick. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy gave his famous moonshot speech. After his murder, the government set to work making his dream a reality. Just 7 years later, on July 20th, 1969, it paid off. The world watched as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first human beings to walk on the moon.
Apollo 11 on its first lunar revolution.
You got a good view there, Neil? Yeah, I sure do. Well, it's beautiful out there, isn't it? The eye approach. Man, this is really something.
As Kennedy's dream was being realized, his brother Ted found himself in the middle of a political firestorm. Days earlier, his car plunged off a bridge on Chappaquiddick Island, resulting in the death of his passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne. On the 20th, the press got wind of her death, sparking media scrutiny and controversy over Kennedy's actions and the subsequent handling of the case.
We should get back.
No, we should go to the beach.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Jefferson and Adams Die.
It's July the 4th. It was 50 years ago today our nation was born.
John Adams and Thomas Jefferson were two of the primary architects of American independence. The Founding Fathers worked together to draft and secure the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776. Over time, their political ideologies diverged. They went from close friends and allies to fierce rivals. After years of silence, they reconciled through a remarkable exchange of letters, rekindling a deep respect for one another.
This is the letter that got them started up again.
That's right. And it's an interesting letter because...
January 1st, 1812.
In a strange twist of fate, both men died on July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after the birth of the nation they helped create. Their simultaneous deaths on Independence Day felt almost symbolic, as if their intertwined legacies were written into the very fabric of American history.
That's right. A letter to Jefferson. Father, no. Tomorrow. Write to him tomorrow. You can do it tomorrow.
History is full of strange and eerie coincidences. Are there other important days where multiple and disparate events took place? Let us know in the comments below. Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.